No Purpose Without Love is a podcast dedicated to helping you find purpose through the relentless pursuit of God's love. The unfortunate reality is that we are born into a world that does not know God. Since God is synonymous with love, to be without God is to be without love. This podcast aims to bring light to the dark areas of your life so that you gain a deeper connection with love as a person, more affectionately known as Jesus. Jesus spoke often about the kingdom of God, and in the kingdom, love is the why behind everything that exists, including our purpose. I am your host, Dave Garesso, and my hope and prayer is that you will experience the overwhelming love of God so powerfully that you will become love to a world that is still very much without love. God has given me the ability to provide the spark, but He wants to fan into flames the purpose that He has for you, which always leaves a trail of breadcrumbs leading right back to our Father and Creator. Please remember to follow this podcast to continue receiving notifications about new episodes as they're released. Now let's get fired up. Well, hello and welcome to the No Purpose Without Love podcast. Once again, I am your host, Dave Garesso, and today I have with me Mr. Steve Turner of Flow Business Solutions. And just to run through his bio real quick, he is the president of Flow Business Solution and the chief operating officer of Beyond Resilience, LLC. I love that name. Steve graduated from the University of Wisconsin with a degree in business administration. This, along with his appreciation and respect for UPS, where he was on the management team while attending college, launched his business career on a leadership journey of success. Steve has a proven 35-year career with UPS. He provided leadership in the diverse environments of operations, finance, and accounting and technology at district, region, and corporate levels. This included 5 years in Europe at the beginning of UPS's global expansion, where he was a finance director with responsibilities in 10 countries. Upon his return to the USA, he moved into UPS Information Services, leading groups that designed, built, and deployed UPS financial systems for worldwide use. His management career took him through 7 relocations across the USA and Europe. His responsibilities in the countries he covered globally solidified an important fact: cultures change, but hearts do not. No matter where he went, he experienced the same reality. Employees will follow those who care about them, train them for success, and appreciate who they are as individuals. His dedication to the individual lives of his employees and the value they provided in his business groups yielded him success in every position he held. He demonstrated the value of leading employees as opposed to managing them. Systems, processes, and procedures should be managed. Employees should be led. I love every word of that bio, Steve. It's a pleasure to have you on and to have you as a guest on this podcast. And I can't wait for what our listeners are going to hear as we have this conversation. So to kick it off, just jump right in and tell us the story of what caused you to even want to work in this space in the first place.
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I got started early. I was 20 years old when I started my management. And I think the fact that I started at that age and had to deal with an issue on day one that I planned for, I wasn't reacting to something. And that was, at the time I was promoted, the people that were going to report to me were going to be older than I was. And that's okay in your 30s, 40s, and 50s because nobody cares. But when you're 22, 23 years old, you don't want somebody 20 years old basically, telling you what to do, such as that. So what happened was my mother was working for a company whose name you'd recognize if I told you, but I won't, because hopefully their systems have changed over the years. But she came back and she would tell me what they were doing so I would know what not to do. But the second thing and most important was going back to being 20 years old. I decided that I would be successful if I just simply treated people the way I would want to be treated. So I did that on day one and it has worked for me ever since. So that's how I got started. And I'm pretty sure where that guidance came from, since, the Lord guides us along the way for sure. But that's how I got started. And it just continued. It worked great in every place I ever was.
How has your walk with Jesus impacted your journey so far?
Well, I can give you an example of something that happened later on in my life But this is interesting. I wasn't saved until I was 48 years old, but the entire journey that I was on up to that point, I realized later that the Lord spoon fed me all the way through my journey. And let me tell you how I discovered that. After I had left UPS on an early retirement, I had been saved by 5 years at that point. And when I was finished, one of the things I wanted to do was get into the coaching world. So I took a look at my career and I wrote down every place I had been, every assignment I ever had. I described the type of group of people that I led and what I learned in each assignment. And what I discovered after 34 years of management, that I was spoon-fed all along the journey. And I was given everything I ever needed. And all this happened before I even realized really the active role that the Lord had in my life all this time. And it was pretty amazing revelation at that point. And since then, I have been very open with him and asked the Holy Spirit to guide my day every single day. And when I have meetings, I find that I say things, I wonder where they come from sometimes, but it's really the result of, asking the Holy Spirit to guide your voice when you walk into a meeting. And if you do, you can provide a lot of blessing to a lot of people simply by listening to what he says.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how many times I've been sitting in a meeting and thought to myself, God, give me the answer, because I have no idea what they're talking about. And then all this stuff will just come out and I didn't know what to say prior to that.
I had an incident I was back here. I was back to the US after I'd been in Europe, and I was involved in an international project. And all of a sudden, this meeting was starting to circle around. And if we had gone on this particular journey we were on at that point, we would have lost 6 months of effort because somebody had missed the boat.
Yeah.
So I had asked the Lord to give me what to say here. I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. I just wanted to know what to say. So as we got into this conversation, I realized in my mind, I said, we can't go that direction or we're going to redo 6 months of work. So something came out of my mouth that caused the ship to shift over here, and we didn't lose the time. And I got done. Well, that was a pretty good statement. But he does. He provides you what you need, when you need it. So
that's right. Every time.
Yeah.
All right. So I have this question here for you that I wanted to ask. When I read your bio, it said that it says his responsibilities in the countries he covered globally solidified an important fact. Cultures change, but hearts do not. So What does that mean for today's leaders in the marketplace?
A couple of things. First of all, I didn't realize that was happening while I was over in Europe. I realized it when I came back, and I sat down and I took a look back over time. And this is really once I got into the coaching world. I went back and I looked at all the stuff that happened, and I thought, my gosh, I mean, this really is the way we lead people works everywhere. Yes. Because not only was I in Europe, but I would also pass through Asia once in a while. And it's a different culture there. I was in 10 different countries in Europe, going from the Nordic countries down through Belgium, the Netherlands, Greece and Turkey, and Ireland over there. And those cultures all vary. But I never, ever had an issue working with anybody under the same premise of treat them with value, listen to what they have to say, provide something to make life better for them. And in those roles, I was a quasi-advisor because I was moving around countries, and there were operations in the countries. So I was kind of like leading them and getting them started so that those operations would be successful. And I just did the same thing all the time. And it's amazing the information you can pick up simply by somebody volunteering something to you that you would have never gotten if you had not treated them well to start with. Yeah. And so now, as far as business leaders, I like to describe it like this. If you use the right approach, it works everywhere, regardless of your responsibility. So one of the challenges I give business leaders, it's a test. I said, if you were given an opportunity to manage or run a business you knew nothing about, what would you do? Now, when Lou Gessner took over IBM back in the 80s, when IBM was starting to struggle, he came from RJ Nabisco. He admitted he didn't know anything about computers, but he knew people. And when he stepped in there, to answer my question is, if you walk into a business you know nothing about, you are forced, if no other reason, to listen to the people around you. You have to tap into the knowledge of the people around you because you don't have it. And when you ask people for their opinion and their advice, they'll answer you practically every time
They will.
because they
Shows you
appreciate
care.
being asked.
Yep.
So this doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter your job. That's why when someone asks me, what is your primary industry niche?
Mhm.
I don't have one because there's people all over.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, it's basically if you treat people right, if you follow the golden rule, treat them like you'd like to be treated, it will work everywhere. Now, that doesn't mean you don't run into challenges because of an industry or something, but you learn those things. But the
Yep.
focus, the core is.
You said the golden rule, and you actually reminded me of the question I was going to ask earlier. I want to talk about the platinum rule. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but I'm curious about what your thoughts are. But before I do that, a lot of what you just said reminded me, I think it's Teddy Roosevelt's quote, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And just the fact that you're asking the question reveals to that person, hey, I care. And all this also just, I can't help but to, realize it all comes back to love, right? It's the universal language. And so regardless of what culture you exist in, you speak love, you speak to everybody. But go ahead, you were going to say something.
So do you know Maya Angelou?
I do.
She I think went to be with the Lord, I don't know, 10 years ago or something. But she had a number of phrases, but this was one of them, if I can paraphrase it correctly. She'll say, people will never remember what you said or what you did, but they will always remember how you made them feel.
That's right. I'm very familiar. That's one of my favorite quotes.
And it is so true. I mean, I can tell you all sorts of stories, but I'll give you one quickly here.
Go for it.
Well, in one of the groups that I took over at UPS as I was on my corporate journey, I went into the group. It was actually the accounting group when I first became this is a supervisor level. So I was at that level, supervisor. And I went into this group, and the guy that had been there the longest time asked me a question. He said, are you one of these guys riding in on a white horse to solve our problems? And my answer was, no, I'm here to hear what you have to say. And all I did within the next couple, 3 weeks, whatever, something happened where I could help him with something. I don't even remember what it was, but that was it. It flipped the switch, and that attitude was gone. And it was a great relationship while I was still there, while I was there.
I bet he didn't get that response often.
No, I don't think so.
It reminds me of the show New Amsterdam. The main character in New Amsterdam, he'd always ask, how can I help?
Yeah,
it was always about how can I serve, right?
Yep.
I love it.
Exactly.
So the platinum rule, right? Platinum rule, the golden rule says treat others the way you want to be treated. But the platinum rule, I once heard from another great leader in an organization that I once worked, said that it's treat others the way that they want to be treated. And I think if you really think about what that means, it tends to make sense. I think it's still in context of the golden rule, but tell me more about what comes to mind.
It's actually the same thing. It's just from the other side. So that's why one of the things, since you brought this up, I'll diverse into this direction.
Sure.
One of the important things about creating a strong workforce and ones that want to follow you, so this is the lead as opposed to manage scenario, is to let them know that you care about them as an individual. When you do this, you're going to find out what they're looking for. So you don't have to guess. So if I came to you as an example and I said, Dave, good to have you. Let's say that you've been, working for me for, a couple months. You were doing your job great. Everything was all perfect and whatever. And I came to you and I said, Dave, you're doing a great job here. I appreciate the effort you put forth. What would you like to do in 3 years? You ask that question, that person is going to realize that you care about them more than whatever their job is.
Yep.
Then you'll hit the platinum level rule because you will find out what they're like over time because you've opened a valuable door there. So I agree. I've never heard it before, but I agree with it because ultimately
I love it.
That's where you end up.
And it still applies, right? Because how would I want to be treated? I'd want my leader to care to ask that question. So therefore I care enough to ask you the same question.
Absolutely.
So,
yep.
Awesome. All right. So what do you believe the difference is between leading and managing?
I think one of the easy ways to take a look at this, you can answer a long question or I'll give you a short one. It's right to the, when people are being managed, they end up obeying their managers because their managers are telling them what. When you are being led, you willingly do obviously what you've been hired for, but you have an attitude to to roll up your sleeves, do whatever it takes to get over a challenge. So when people are managed, they tend to resist because nobody likes the obey scenario. I don't like it. It drives me nuts. If I,
Right.
give somebody, train them how to be successful, but I'm listening to them as an individual and leading them along the way, I know that they will dig in. When something goes wrong, their first effort is not running to my door, it's trying to get the job done. And it just creates better teamwork. And then you end up with the long-term result of this is resistance ultimately results in a mindset shift into survival mentality, where people come to work simply for the paycheck because they're not inspired to be there for any other reason. If you're on the lead side, you're in the other place. So if you're in the managed spot, it's very likely the highlight of your day is punching out. And that's a bad environment to be in. How would you like to, I would hate it. Go to work, spend, 8, 9, whatever hours in a location with somebody, and your highlight is leaving. Your highlight needs to be while you're there. When you leave people, their highlight will be the whole time they're there. Now, there's nothing wrong with going home, right? Now, let me give you this one before you ask. This is another test of how people function in their own environment. So one of my objectives is that to lead a business so that everybody can experience this test. When you go home at night and you walk in the front door and your significant other says, "How was your day, dear?" You can give a positive answer and then spend the rest of the evening talking about the victories of your children instead of allowing the ugliness of the day to spoil the evening. It's just more fun.
Yeah, it is.
And it works better.
I agree. I learned something there, Steve. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Gold nuggets of wisdom. I was reminded of a leader that I had years ago. He used to say, "Lead people, manage things." It was just a principle. And that's when I learned about that. And it's just always stuck with me. And so meeting you years later was exciting because it's like, I see a little bit of him in you. And I always enjoyed, he was a great leader. He was good to me. All right. So moving on, all right. Tell us about, I know you and I have talked in the past about a number of stats that really do show and support the need for leaders to learn how to lead their people. So tell us a little bit about the stats that you've learned.
All right. I'll give you the core stat that is impacted by lots of things. There's a statistic that's been reported by the Gallup organization since 1990. So it's been 33 years now. And the statistic says this: 85% of employees are not fully engaged in their work. Okay. And that statistic hasn't changed up more than 1 point, one way or the other, all the way through all this time. Now, one of the challenges with doing something about this is that it really reflects the management philosophy that's been in existence in this country since the Industrial Revolution. And that was caused by when farmers came off the farm and moved into the factory. They moved from having a life where they were fully accountable for everything they did. You want to dig deep into the agrarian society, into an environment where they don't have, be careful, not 100%, but they have somebody else telling them what to do for 8 hours. We have a natural desire created by God, Genesis 1:28, that says that we have a desire to rule our lives. And that's a whole other discussion, but I'll just take it for being a reality. So when the Industrial Revolution, nothing against Industrial Revolution, nothing at all, because lots of stuff has come from it. But one of the things that got challenged and got spoiled is recognizing the individual as who they are. And this has gone on ever since 1850 when this started. In 1856, the first labor union showed up, which was a sign of the fact that we had this problem. And it's rolled on ever since. And every generation of management people has replicated itself. And the manage versus rule scenario is out there. Okay, back to the statistic. If something hasn't changed, now keep with this. You can say, 85% is a pretty good number. And I said, well, that means only 15% are fully engaged. That tells me there's opportunity out there.
A lot of it.
Yeah. Okay. So to move the needle from 85% not fully engaged to move it to 85% fully engaged, then two things have to happen. Number one, the CEO has to know where his people are and how they view the management. Okay. Now, some might say it doesn't matter. Well, okay, but they need to know where they are. Okay, that's great. Okay, here's my snapshot. Done. The next thing that has to happen is there has to be a plan, a strategic plan put together that takes the organization from where they are to where they need to be. You have to have both steps. Just because the Gallup organization says 85% people are not fully engaged in their work, and you have people like me standing up and saying, this is what you can do to fix that problem. That doesn't do anything. All it does is it excites leaders for about 2 months. They may have a seminar on something dealing with this. I remember back in the 80s, I can tell you it was probably 1982 or so, that the buzzword was empowerment. Okay, so I was at UPS, a young supervisor at the time. We had a seminar on empowerment, but that was the last time I ever heard the word after the seminar. And the issue is, it's not that there's a fault with the seminar, other than the fact that everybody comes back to the status quo, everyday life, and it just continues because there's no follow-up from the seminar.
So I wanted to ask though, I've seen that, Steve. How do we improve on that? Like what should happen there?
The way it should work is, so anyway, let me just paint the scenario first.
Sure.
So 2 months into the program, everything goes back to the status quo, and 10 months later, the cycle starts over. That's what's been happening. Now, the answer to your question is the answer for every single seminar, webinar that has ever been held that's off-site. It can be on-site, but in an office. That's the point, is it's away from the workplace. Is you can learn a lot of great information. I can sit here and teach everybody how to lead people. I can do it over, whatever many hours it would take me to go through all the material. If you don't do anything with it, it's just an exercise. So you need to take what you're trained to do, come back into the workplace, and actually put a plan together to put those things in place. If you do it, you have a much better chance of succeeding. But if the only thing you do is go to a seminar, you come back to the status quo, to regular day-to-day life, that's what you fall into because that's what you're used to. You have to intentionally do something to change.
You're creating new habits, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're not repeating behaviors, you can't create new habits, and you live under the old paradigm.
Yep, exactly. Mindsets, paradigms, and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And there's a great book out there by James Clear called Atomic Habits. Have you heard of it?
I have. I've read it.
Yeah. Well, everybody should read it because it's very applicable. But
it is.
Anyway, you have to take what you learn and apply it. Hearing it doesn't do it. It's got to be, you got to do something with it.
Yeah. Excellent. So this is another question that I had for you. Do all leaders believe in the manage things lead principle, and how would you respond to the conflict?
Say it again.
Do all leaders believe in this manage things lead people principle? No. Yeah. So then how would you respond to that conflict?
The way I respond, first of all, is to actually talk about the difference between the two, because you have to remember that now there are some exceptions. I've seen some breaking of the status quo a little bit in isolated places, but you have to understand the difference between the two. And I'll tell you, let me give you by example. Well, first of all, understand the difference between what does it mean to manage versus lead. Okay. Now, and I don't think there's that many people that even think about it, because all they're doing is replicating what they were taught.
That's right.
Because who intentionally teaches something that they know is incorrect? So there is a breaking of the management paradigm that has to happen. And that's why it's important. It's good to have a kind of like a progressively thinking leader who is willing to try things, look at what's going on, and want to change it. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen for everybody, but it can happen if you just take the time to listen. Now, here's the problem. When businesses start to grow, and this is actually, I have a team, but when businesses start to grow, even UPS with 500,000 people they have now globally started with 4 people in a basement of an office at the corner of 2nd and Main Street in Seattle, Washington in August, I think the 14th of 1907. Okay. So every single business starts with 1, 2, or 3 people or whatever, right? As the business grows, you hire some people. Now, the owner and the person that's been hired, they're working side by side. because they're both working to get the job done. When the time comes that you've got like 5 or 6 employees, maybe 7, the owner is now going to say, well, I need to have somebody manage the day-to-day operation because I need to go back and do the things that I need to do to support the business. So they choose somebody. Now there's a manager. But during this time, the owner is still hiring people. So when the owner, even when the manager, they're talking, it's still pretty close working, and they determine that we need to hire, 2 or 3 more people. The owner is probably hiring yet, but the day is going to come when the manager starts to hire. There is a bond between an owner and an employee that's different than a manager and an employee. And the owner needs to instill ownership mentality in the manager so they will have the same relationship with the employees. Now let's go to the next level. Now you've got more management people. Well, soon the business starts to grow and the owner gets more separated from the day-to-day work, as he should be. But what happens is all those fired up employees when you first got started, their link was the owner. Now the owner's not there. And if the manager's not trained to treat people like they're supposed to be treated, those employees will start the downward spiral from being a tremendous employee down to becoming stagnant. And that's how organizations change. And you have to be intentional to stop the spiral. And then now go ahead. So there is a little bit more to the story.
Sure.
Now, what happens in an organization that gets where there's multiple levels of management? The business model, the business plans, the goals of the organization come down from the top. That's normal, right? So the CEO meets with the C-suite. They say yes, go to the next level of management. Ultimately, that message of this is our business plan flows down into the frontline supervisor, who, in my opinion, has one of the hardest jobs in any organization, because that person has to take the number message and give it to his people who have their feet in the street in an inspirational message, so that those folks that actually make the business function are doing it because they want to, so that that happens. And there are too many frontline supervisors that have no clue how to do that. And there's no training for it. No. I came up through the ranks. I know it. I started with the golden rule thing at the beginning. So I got through it because that's the way I treated people all the time. But if you're promoted to be a management person based on what you did in your non-management role, that doesn't make you a leader. You have to develop leaders. All right. That was a long answer to your question.
No, it was great. I've never heard anyone break it down like that. But what stands out to me about that is the need for better relationships and the forming of that across the lines of not just ranks, just between people. Because if the owner doesn't do a good job taking that vision and that passion and really the why behind why they started in the first place, everything gets lost and diluted. It's like that. I think it was back in school when we would whisper something in the person's ear and then they would pass it to everybody until it got to the end. It was completely different.
See, here's another challenge. And this is one of the things, if I had the opportunity to speak to every single new CEO that started a business, that's my first message. They don't do it intentionally. They're just wrapped up in the growth of the business. That's normal, right? It's just not thought of. And it needs to be. Yeah. So when I have talk to people about scaling a business, that's one of my biggest topics, because it's the most missed part of it as well.
Yeah. So I want to shift the conversation a little bit. So a lot of employees look to better opportunities go in their future, and that may or may not mean remaining on the same team as that leader that they're working with. And there's a lot of leaders that aren't comfortable with this. So talk to us a little bit more about why you don't have an issue with that. Based on our past conversations, you think that's a great thing.
Yeah. Now I've done a lot of assuming new job roles as I was rolling through UPS. So, I've hired a handful of new people, but I developed them along the way. But the important thing here is to remember what it's like to be on the other side. If you always remember what it's like to be on the other side as a management person, you will treat people the way they need to be treated. And repeat the second half of your question, because my brain started rolling off when you got started.
It's quite all right. So what I was saying is, like, if folks are moving on in a different direction. Some
Okay. Yeah,
leaders
got it.
are like, no, 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 no.
Yeah. All
Go
right.
ahead.
So when I bring people on and I find out who they are and what their goals are, I don't care if they are going to have to go outside the organization to satisfy their need. Now, I'll be very honest with you. I will try everything possible to provide somebody with what they're looking for. Because of the fact that I'm willing to do that, makes that employee or encourages that employee to want to be in the group working. Now, I had this happen. I had, when I was in the technology group at UPS, I had an excellent programmer who had a great personality. And he came to me one day and he said, in our conversations, because I have continual conversations with people, reviews and whatever, that he wanted to do a particular job, right? Well, I didn't have that opportunity. So I knew full well the day was going to come when he was going to come in my office and tell me that he was going to move on, right? That's good for him. But while he was with me, he was an ace. He was an excellent employee. He did what he was supposed to do with a great attitude, had a great relationship because his contacts were all the people in all the foreign countries that UPS had in the financial realm. He was always talking to. So even when the day came that he decided to move on, great, congratulations, let's go. I brought a young lady in to take over for him. They worked together for a short time. But the fact that he had the relationships with all the people in all the countries that we were working with made her job easy to learn. And she stepped in practically with a very short learning curve because those people out there made her successful. But it's still, when you come down to individuals, we want individuals to be successful in their skill set. Now, as I said before, I'd rather they stayed inside UPS at that point. UPS is a massive organization and there's lots of job opportunities, but not everyone. And in this case, I lost somebody because of it. But that's okay. He was great while he was there.
Absolutely. What are a few things that leaders can do today for their employees to give them a greater sense of meaning, purpose, and joy in the work that they do?
There are certainly actions to take, but you have a hurdle to get over. Okay. If you've been a certain type of manager, certain type of leader as a manager for a while, whatever a while means, and they decide that they want to shift gears so they're more people related, people oriented, etc. Most of the time you can start to cross the bridge when you sit down and have conversation. Now I usually warn somebody that if you want to shift and become a people person when you weren't one before, your people are going to study you and basically test you and find out what you're doing because you're not yourself, you're a new self. So I tell people to take small steps. In other words, you might want to get your group together, have a group meeting that basically goes like this. You can say, I would like to get you more involved in the things that we do here. I'm wide open to your recommendations. If you have any questions about what we're doing, I would like to answer them. Now, most likely the people are going to have you on trial. They're going to think, well, I don't know for sure if this is happening, but just go through the process a couple times. When you find something that can be done for them, do it, and they will begin to believe you. Then you can move into one-on-one meetings, asking people personally what they would like to do, and you can close the gap into where you're a leader who wants to develop people as opposed to being a manager. I think the best way to open the door for a manager to move into being a leader is to sit down with people and ask them for an opinion and tell them that I would really like to get ideas from you and what we do here, keeping this in mind. This is important. You're not putting the business up to a vote. You're gathering information. You're gathering people's opinions. And if someone says, I think this would be a good thing, and the leader can do it, basically recognizing and acting on a recommendation that came from an employee, you'll start to open the door to where they will believe what you're doing. Because you do this the first time, they're going to wonder if it's a show. But when you do it the second time and the third time, in other words, having these get-togethers, they'll start to see that you're serious about what you're doing. Once they get to that point, then you've got the flexibility to do the other things. Like one of the things I focus on is one of the things that people hate the most are annual reviews. They hate them because it comes across as being something that they can check off a checklist saying they did a review. Reviews with employees should be based upon the previous one. So when you bring somebody in, you start training them, you might have a review, sit down review, not a training session, a sit down review. And you may do that once a month for a while. Then it may go to every 2 months or something. But the timing is based on what the employee needs, not based on a calendar that says I need to have a review once a year. When I sit down, and the timing stretches out over time because you begin to recognize and learn each other, and there's a program going on. So if I was to ask you, what you'd like to do in 5 years, and you give me an answer, and I think it would be a good idea if we would touch base in 4 months and just see what your thinking is, I'd say, well, let's have a chat in about 4 months and see where you are, right? And so then 4 months later, we have another chat, and you set the reviews up based on the previous one, based on what would be the best timing, not because it's a year, but because it helps you. And keeping in mind, every time you help an employee, you're helping your business because the teamwork is better.
That's right.
So, yep, people can change for sure.
Yes,
but
they can.
You have to decide to change first.
That's right. I mean, it just still comes back to caring enough about the people. This is a people game. Businesses exist to serve people. Like that. What is the point of having one? I've often heard it, in corporate America, because I have over 20 years experience in that space too, that it's all about the bottom line. And I don't know that I agree with that statement, but maybe you feel otherwise.
I'll put it this way. There will always be numbers because it reflects the success or lack thereof of an organization. But you cannot forget that it's people that do the work. That's why when I gave the example of the information flowing down to the frontline supervisor who needs to inspire people, the value of the inspiration is huge because there shouldn't be a single person in a business that isn't needed. So if we have an employee or a group of employees that are doing something, they're there for a reason. So they should feel as important themselves as the reason they're there. They should not be demoralized because they're there, because the job they're doing is still needed. But the spirit and the atmosphere and the attitude behind it is negative. Well, you know what? That leads to the stagnation route, where people are only there because they need to put bread on the table. It's just more fun to have people there because they want to be there.
That's right.
And I could give lots of examples of this. How much time do I have?
We do need to wrap up. I was going to say, you talked earlier too about those wanting to clock out. That's like the first thing on their mind. I've also heard John Maxwell talk about this. He says these are the people that back into the car spaces when they park in the morning, so they can be the first ones to try out. I always laugh at that.
Yeah, John Maxwell is good. Yep.
So just to kind of wrap it up, two things. One, what is ultimately the message that you want the leaders of the marketplace to hear today? And then how can folks reach you and the services that you provide when they do?
The bottom line message that we are putting out there is to train your leadership team because of the fruit that comes from it. And it's one of the reasons I use the employee turnover scenario, because if you have all CEOs, business owners focus on, bottom line numbers. They're supposed to. There's nothing wrong with it. But so the bottom line number that employee turnover fixes, if you can cut the turnover, is the cost of turnover. But the residual benefit of having people around longer, so that you can develop people long term, so you can promote from within, you create an attitude where people want to be there. Now, can you just imagine, and this is very important in a time when it's difficult to find employees. If I had an employee that went out and said good things about the business, where it inspired people to want to come and work for us, that's a good thing. That doesn't happen unless the people are taken care of. And turnover is. But the biggest message is that we need to treat people as individuals. And if anybody was to examine how they manage or lead, whatever the case, whatever the reality is, just think about what kind of a reaction do they get when they're doing their managing. There's resistance there, guaranteed. Yep. But CEOs should build leadership teams that lead people. And we do that. You can find us at Flow. It's www.flow-business-solution, singular. And there's a reason it's singular. The things that we do are Holy Spirit inspired. They come from one source. So flow-business-solution.com. You can call my office at 753-5568. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Now, there's a number of Steve Turners there, so it's my extension is SW Turner at LinkedIn. And we'd love to hear from you. And we are here on this mission to change the leadership style of whoever we touch.
And I'm excited for it, Steve. This is not our first conversation, obviously, but for those listening, some of the conversations we had were super inspiring. And I'm excited for what God is going to do with your business. He's already working in it. There's more to the story that we haven't even been able to share on this episode. But it's just to see what's already happened. I can only imagine what's coming in the future. So thanks for being on with us today and for sharing your wisdom.
It's a pleasure. Always love doing this.
Definitely. So, and if you're watching and you want to talk to Steve or hear more about what he does or get access to some of the links that he talked about, that's going to be posted in the description of this podcast episode. So be on the lookout for that. And until the next time, lead well, live on purpose, and honor God with your life. Thanks, Steve.
Amen. Amen. All right. Take care, David.
Thank you once again for listening and supporting the No Purpose Without Love podcast. If you like what you've been hearing, please remember to follow this podcast to continue receiving notifications about new upcoming episodes. For more information about how to start your own purpose-filled journey or to get in touch with me, you can start my online course by going to courses.beaconleaders.com, or you can email me at info@beaconleaders.com. You can also visit my website at www.davideguerreso.com. I will post these links and others in the description section of each episode as well. So until next time, remember to lead well, live on purpose, and honor God with your life.